You have to find your purpose, and in turn, you will find your own happiness. And I had it wrong the whole time, looking for that rock bottom. How low do I have to take my life to turn it around? I never realized it was the opposite end of the spectrum, full of positivity and love and connection and purpose, that ultimately healed me and allowed me to get this poison out of my life forever.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Taking a walk can have numerous benefits for everyone, such as promoting relaxation, stress management, and mood improvement. As you embark upon your mile-long walk today, I appreciate you tuning in as we delve into a conversation with today's guest, Air Force Master Sergeant Josh White. Throughout his military career, Josh's exceptional ability to generate authentic conversations has made him highly influential within the veteran community and beyond, leading him to create the Hero Front podcast. Josh's work has become a catalyst for personal growth and positive change with his listeners, empowering them to take positive action in their own lives. Josh, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Danny, thank you and your awesome wife so much for setting this up. Big fan of your platform. Y'all are just doing amazing things. I know greatness when I see it, and I'm just very honored to be here.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I'm super excited to chat with you today. It's not often that we have active duty military members on our platform. However, with the message that you're spreading through the Hero Front podcast, your personal journey, I'm really excited to dive into our conversation. And while our listeners remember to fire up their trusty Strava app so that we can all stay connected on our virtual walk together, would you mind sharing how your military upbringing influenced your decision to serve our country and eventually become a Master Sergeant in the Air Force?
Absolutely. So I'm 4th generation Air Force. So my great-grandfather was a colonel and was in the Army Air Corps. My grandfather, he was stationed in Turkey. On my mom's side, same thing, grandfather stationed in Turkey. That's how my parents met. And through that process, I basically grew up seeing my dad in blues. And just how proud he was of that, going to his promotion ceremonies and just seeing how purposeful he was, really, I really knew in my heart that that's where I was going to take my life one day. He never said anything to me about it, and I never straight up came out with it. But towards the end of my high school, I was like, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. And I wanted to follow in his footsteps.
That's awesome. You mentioned he was a colonel, so he went the officer route. What inspired you to go enlisted? So
my great-grandfather was the colonel. My dad, he actually had a very impressive story where he was a poor kid out of West Virginia, joined enlisted, and then got his degree, and he retired as a major and a squadron commander. So a rags to riches, kind of life. And then he has that great, GS life afterwards. And now he's living his best life in the Virginia, DC area. So super proud of him, but it was also kind of daunting for me because how could I live up to that? I felt like such a goofball. I wasn't sure what I was good at. I didn't really know myself. I didn't know my values. I didn't know what purpose was. I was just kind of taking it one day at a time. And so, living up to that had always been on my heart and on my mind. And it can kind of go both ways, right? It can kind of encourage you, but at the same time, when you're feeling like you're a failure, that kind of adds an extra layer of sting to it.
Absolutely. I mean, the feeling of not being able to add up to what your aspirations are, especially when your inspiration is so close to you. It's not like your inspiration was this far off person that you never met or that you didn't have a personal connection with. It was your father saying, oh my gosh, he's such an incredible person. So what has your military journey been like, and what challenges have you faced along the way?
So similar with you, Danny, you kind of shared a little bit about your story, which you got to come on my platform and we're going to just deep dive that whole thing. I struggle with alcohol as well. And mine, looking back, was the isolation that I faced, not at my first assignment. That was cushy job. I was with all my friends in Guam. And that was the best first base assignment ever. But however, when I got to Kadena in Okinawa, that was such a real world mission. I ended up doing 12s for a year on nights. And there were just some really quiet nights. It was too much time to think. And, at the time, just seeing the people I graduated high school with, like completing their degrees and doing all these big things when I just was on this quiet flight line, on a weekend, knowing that all these people are having fun in Okinawa, I'm stuck here. And that isolation, that downtime really started to eat at me like bad. I just started hating where I was at in life. I felt like I wasn't doing anything and I didn't know where to start. I didn't have a mentor. I literally did not know where to start. And so I froze, right? And I started drinking, more and more. In Guam, it was like a one big party, but all those habits kind of, went south as soon as I started isolating. Now I wasn't drinking socially. Now I wasn't drinking to party. I was drinking to deal with, not hating myself, not hating my life, to basically just check out for as long as I could. So I would race home. Like I actually got a speeding ticket once because I was racing home so fast so I could get as many drinks in as I could before I had to go to bed. Because I was just that angry and upset and frustrated with where I was at in my life. When I got to my next assignment after that, I was Mun's age. So I worked with aerospace ground equipment that supports bombs for the B-2. It was a very unique mission. And that was a really cool experience. But again, I was missing that purpose. I knew maintenance wasn't my purpose. I really wasn't sure still who I was or where I was going, but I was floundering. I had no education. I was just blowing through my paychecks, trying to buy happiness. Let's buy this video game. Let's buy this movie. Just trying to find a way to be happy that was just not helping. So, towards the end of that 6-year mark, I was faced with separating with no money, no school, and in poor health. Because during that time of isolation and drinking, I developed a very serious heart virus called myocarditis that hospitalized me for a month. And I almost died from that. Like, straight up, my dad flew out. Him coming out actually saved my life. Because when he came out, I was actually so happy to see him and be out of my normal everyday life that I actually pulled through. So that hospital time was one of the best times of my life. That wasn't my rock bottom, however. I thought it was. And I was very disappointed when a few months after that, I was back to drinking so much that I would wake up with vomit on me. And at that point, I pretty much completely gave up on myself. I said, well, if almost dying didn't stop me, then I'm just going to die. I just accepted that. At some point, I'm just not going to be here. And it wasn't like a decision to end my life in one sitting, but it was the decision to end my life over an extended period of time. I don't know if there's a word for that, but there should be. But that's essentially what I was doing. So I have to say that was probably the biggest challenge. That first, 6 to 10 years in the military just almost broke me.
Josh, when you're sitting here telling your story, it gives me chicken skin because I wish I could say it's the first time I've heard or even experienced a similar type of journey, especially for young people going into the military. We had this idea of what it's going to be, and a lot of the times being separated from our support group, we take jobs or duty stations that aren't necessarily in line with our values or what our aspirations were. And we start to struggle to find ourselves. And unfortunately, like, alcohol is the easy fix because it's available everywhere. It's not taboo in our circles. A lot of people I know, when I came in, they were like, oh, you're old enough to serve. You're old enough to drink. Here you go. And it's a rite of passage within the military life. And, when I was on my journey to stop drinking, I even had some senior enlisted kind of tell me, like, hey, you might not want to start addressing this issue because it can lead to detriment in your career to stop drinking, especially in a more formalized way. And so, like, I want to, commend you because I know part of your story is that you eventually did stop drinking, but also to start to have that realization that you don't really care about existing is a really hard thing to put into words and to actually start saying out loud. And when you talk about this myocarditis, for those that don't have a medical background, that means that there's inflammation around your heart muscles, and it's usually due to physical stressors that we put on our bodies through diet and lack of exercise, or an increased amount of exercise and some sort of illness that accompanies high stress. And so isolation does lead to high amounts of stress that negatively affect our bodies. And while you were going through these things, and you said it was around your 6 to 10 year mark in the Air Force, while you're, probably picking up rank, you're probably doing reasonably well at your job, because the job is usually the last thing to go in the lives of somebody that's in these struggles. When did things begin to change for you?
Yeah, and then that's actually the harder part for me to figure out. I've thought about it a lot, right? It's easy to tell you the downfall, but it's much harder to describe all the steps that culminated in getting past it. I feel like that's a longer process. Going down is much faster, but it did impact my job. By that third base, I was complete trash because I was hungover every day. Like, I would have to go into the restroom and fall asleep in a stall. I remember doing a check on some equipment and falling asleep next to the equipment, and then when they caught me, I had to play it off, because that's pretty serious. If you're sleeping in broad daylight while working in the military, I mean, that is not okay. But that's the point I was at, and so I was in trouble during that time quite often. I was probably on my way out, to be honest with you. So much so that I even hated my last name, because every time I heard it, there was a negative connotation with it. Like, great, what did I mess up this time? What? So I even hated the sound of my name. But I'm really blessed to say I had a second chance, which is very rare. And that second chance was me retraining. So I wanted to go into the medical career field. I knew I was a much more better admin person. I'm not a naturally good mechanic. It's not something I want to do my whole life, right? And I knew that would be a much better fit. I didn't want to leave the military, truly. I just wanted to leave that job and try to find my purpose and my spot in this world where I felt like I was using my strengths and not trying to make my weaknesses stronger. It just wasn't working. And so I'm blessed to say I did get that retrain. And that changed my life. So that retrain came, I feel like this is just divine intervention. I knew that I had a purpose in life. I knew that I had more. I even have a tattoo on my arm that says a fire inside, because I really feel like we all have that. Some people never find it, and I knew I had it, and I needed to bring it out. And so along with that retrain came a $20,000 bonus. So again, didn't even know there was a bonus, right? I go to retrain, I'm signing the paperwork. They're like, which account do you want this bonus to go to? I'm like, what are you talking about? And mind you, at this point, I'm in a tremendous amount of debt, right? I have just blown through my money. And so the new job, plus I get this bonus, I really, truly had a second chance at life. At around that same time, I met my now wife, and I wanted to keep her in my life. And the drinking constantly, I was not going to keep her in my life. She made it clear that this was not going to work, right? She was out of my league. She was about done with her degree. I'm this senior airman who should be a staff, drinking, just, getting fat and hating my life and complaining. She was clearly out of my league. I'd say meeting her was a big encouragement to change as well, right? Because I did fall in love with her, and I did want her to stay in my life forever. And I knew deep down inside, I wanted to be the man she deserved, right? So I was going to start making changes. I got to public health. That's the career field that I got picked up for. We went to Luke Air Force Base. And, with different rank and different career fields come different struggles, right? Different types of toxic leaders you come across, different types of things that are really unfair or rub you the wrong way. And I had to really work through those tools on dealing with certain individuals the higher I went up. And I wasn't very good at it because I'd get super angry, and I really just didn't know how to articulate it other than like screaming or yelling at them. And so this made me drink again. So I kind of started falling back into that trap. And one thing I've actually never told anyone, because I've been a guest like multiple times, as you know, I've been on a guest tour of sorts. But one thing I have not shared on any other platform is that at my very worst in Arizona, because mind you, my wife thinks I'm on the up and up, right? At some point, I break my heel bone in CrossFit. I fall off a rope climb. I shatter my heel bone, which is actually very serious. Like it could get you kicked out of the military because some people never run again. So I'm wearing a cast for a year. I'm like super down on myself, like getting super fat, and I'm dealing with this toxic leader. And I start really leaning into the drinking again. I was taking days off just to drink. And that's probably one of my worst moments because I'd be blackout drunk at like noon, like gone. And I was trying to hide that from my wife. And so I took another one of those days where I needed to just drink and just forget everything that I was dealing with. And so I crushed all this alcohol, and in my drunken stupor, I'm like, where do I hide these bottles? Because my wife's almost home from work. So I put it under our guest room sink, something we never, ever go in, right? The guest bathroom sink. There's nothing under that we ever need to look for. So I stick it there and say, I'll deal with it later. Well, where do you think she checked that night?
Right into that sink.
Of course, right? Isn't that just how life is? Like, of course, she went to that for some reason and found all these empty bottles and almost divorced me like that night. And so I had wake up call after wake up call, and here I am on the second chance, and I feel like I'm just blowing it. I feel like I'm just ruining my life again, even with the second chance. So how I ended up turning it around was the next assignment I went back to Whiteman. Now I picked that base intentionally because that was where I had myocarditis. That's where I was isolating. I wanted a redo at that base. I wanted to go back and face that. And let's be honest, no one picks Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. So as soon as I asked for it, I got it that day. I probably got someone a promotion. So I go back there, and here's what I was missing the whole time. I'll tell you, I told you purpose, right? I don't know my place in this world. I don't know what purpose feels like. I'm still missing that, right? That was the key that I was missing. And I had to get out of my comfort zone to find that purpose, and I didn't realize that. And so it all started with taking on one commander's call, right? At this point, I laid low. I've been in 10 years. I'm at a new base. I lay low. I don't volunteer for anything. I already feel like I have enough on my plate, right? And these are high risk, high reward type of things. They could go south real quick. I mean, these commanders call for your whole group. Like, if you goof that up, like, you're done. And to me, that risk was just too high and not worth it. But I had a boss that said, hey man, like, you're ready, like, you're doing this. Like, it was handed to him, and he was like, nah, you're doing it. He's like, I'm retiring. Like, what? It's not going to help me. You've avoided this stuff. You're doing it. So, kudos to him. Sergeant McKivitz was his name. And I'm terrified. I mean, I'm talking with the commander. She's talking 1,000,000 miles an hour. I want this. It was like a holiday themed one. So it had like all the bells and whistles, right? Like performances and like all this games. I mean, this was not like your normal commander's call. But you know what? I got through it. And it ended up being like the best commander's call ever. And I realized that, we can change things on the fly. If something goes wrong, we can clutch it and we can fix it. Like, it's not this went wrong, so the whole thing's done, right? So I learned a lot about myself, and I had a lot of confidence from that. And that one decision to take that on was the first step I took to stop drinking. It started with that. I started volunteering for other things and other things and other things. Pretty soon I filled in for the group executive officer. It's like the direct assistant to the commander. It's an officer position. I do that for 3 months. She ends up hiring me the whole time. I was like, yeah, but I'm not, I'm enlisted. Like, this is an officer spot. She's like, I don't care. You make me laugh. Like, you're the guy. You're my exec. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is... So in almost no time at all, I've made a tremendous amount of progress. I'd say I changed my whole life in a year. And I never, that's another thing that stopped me. We feel like it's this impossible mountain that we're never, ever going to reach. Right. And that holds us back. That thought that this is tremendous. But I'm telling you, in 1 year, a lot of positivity happened. From that, I got picked up for the Honor Guard program manager. So I'm running military funeral honors for the entire state of Missouri for Air Force veterans and active duty service members. And let me tell you that there is no tougher job than that, right? And I knew that going into it. I was terrified at that. Like, we got all these people watching you, mourning their loved one. You're folding a flag. You have the firing party. It's such a complicated and terrifying process that I knew if I truly was going to get to the next level, I had to really get out of my comfort zone and really be there for people in their darkest hour, something that no one would volunteer for, right? Well, I did that. That could be a whole episode by itself. Just that experience. That was a crazy 2 years of really high times and really low times. But I got to say, that gave me the purpose that I was looking for. For the first time in my life, I started really believing in myself and really connecting with people. There's something about going to those funerals and especially the active duty funerals when they're from suicides, right? We had 5 of those. And that takes your whole team. That is a super traumatic event. And I'm handing flags to children, to parents, to the spouse, and giving the message of condolence. So I'm seeing the after effect firsthand. But that type of bonding brought our team together so much that I really felt connected with the airmen. I was able to mentor them and really guide them and change their opinion on the Air Force. I had some people tell me that they wanted to end their life before they came to Honor Guard. I'm starting to really feel like this is amazing. Like, this is healing people. And through that process, I ended up, for the first time ever, winning an award. My supervisor put me in, right? Usually they're like, hey, you put yourself in. But on my behalf, without me even knowing, they put me in. And because I was doing such a good job and everyone knew it on base, it won at the squadron, it won at the group, and then it won at the wing. And that was like in front of the whole base, right? My wife's there. I have my 2-year-old daughter. It was like one of the happiest, probably the happiest moment of my life. Because I realized in that moment, I never thought I deserved that. Like, I never pursued it because somewhere deep down inside, I didn't feel worthy enough to be that person. And so that night we go out to this restaurant. And as you know, as someone who drank, Danny, if you can celebrate and you can just have that pass to drink, bro, we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to get annihilated, right? Like, oh, snap, I got a free pass. Like, we're celebrating. My wife's driving. I'm drinking. Like, heck yeah. And when the waiter came up to me, I took a water with lemon. My wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, you know what? I'm so proud and happy. And I got you and my daughter. And, I felt so much love and connection in that moment that I realized I didn't need to fill in anything with alcohol. For the first time, I didn't need it to make my life better or to ignore something. And I swear to you, in that moment, I stopped and I never drank again. And that was like about 4 or 5 years ago now. Like, it wasn't a planned thing. I literally realized that you have to earn purpose and happiness. Like, it's not going to fall in your lap. You have to unlock your own potential. You have to find your purpose. And in turn, you will find your own happiness. And I had it wrong the whole time, looking for that rock bottom. How low do I have to take my life to turn it around? I don't think I could. I think I would have ended up dying. I never realized it was the opposite end of the spectrum, full of positivity and love and connection and purpose, that ultimately healed me and allowed me to get this, poison out of my life forever.
Yeah, it's such a powerful journey, Josh. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. And for anybody looking for the unabridged version of Josh's journey, like, I encourage you, go listen to his podcast. He shares very openly with a lot of details on every step along the way. And I just want to hit some of these high points because I really feel it's important for our listeners to really understand what you're talking about when you're talking about this purpose, love, connection, tying not external factors of what can I get, what can I do, but who am I serving? And when you were mentioning serving along the honor guard and putting yourself outside of your comfort zone to comfort grieving people and to be of maximum service to other people, finding kind of your place where you belonged, the miracles started happening. The obsession to drink eventually faded away. And that in and of itself is an absolute miracle. You're out celebrating and you're not sitting there going, okay, I'm going to line up a shot of Jack and Cuervo and like do the four wise men. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to be present with these people that are celebrating this accomplishment and this journey with me. And the fact that you've continued that. So how has the love, purpose, and connection kept you in this space and helped develop you as a leader and a father?
I mean, you don't know you until you have no more vices. I mean, really, I'm not going to say it was easy after that, right? Like, I started small. I just said, let me just do my time in honor guard, this 2 years without drinking, right? Like, I set smaller benchmarks than saying, I'm never doing this ever again. Because I've said that plenty of times and I've always came back to it. And I always was very disappointed in myself when I realized I couldn't even listen to me. Right. So I didn't want to say never again. And as a matter of fact, I still don't say never again. I try not to, because I think it's important to have those benchmarks, you know, to make it smaller and not make it feel so grand and impossible. And that's how like special forces gets through their training, right? That's kind of where I got the concept, is that they take it one scenario, one exercise at a time. If they think about the whole 12 hours of getting smoked, they're never going to make it mentally. They take it literally one like obstacle at a time in their head, and that's how they get through it. And so I basically took that same philosophy with my path of sobriety. And I have to say that that's a much better way to approach it in my experience. But I didn't know me, right? And so I was very uncomfortable with social situations, with other people drinking. You know, some people don't like you if you don't drink. They just don't even want you around. So like I saw that, right? I stopped getting invited to certain, you know, barbecues. So I lost some friends, made some new friends, but it really allowed me to open up my heart and just really connect with people, you know, and see them grow, which was amazing. So one of my interviews is that I recommend anyone to listen to is Tech Sergeant Jeremy Rutherford, who is a genius, absolutely amazing person who helped me take our honor guard to the next level. I truly couldn't do it without this guy. And everyone warned me about him too, by the way. They said, he's too intense. You know, you're both tech sergeants. Like you shouldn't hire someone the same rank as you, because he was a reservist and I was going to put him on active orders. And something in my heart just, I knew he cared about the honor guard mission so much and he had the experience that if I denied him the chance, it would be purely ego driven. Like I knew in my heart, yes, he's better than me. He's done this before, but what are we here for? We're here for these families. Is he going to help with our team be better for these families? Yes. So why would I say no? Because I'm scared that he'll do better than me. Like I couldn't let that be a factor, you know? So I was able to start getting over my own ego and fears in a much healthier way with this clear head. And I saw Jeremy Rutherford. He lost his brother, who was also his best friend, to suicide. So his younger brother, who they were going to take on the world together, they lived together, and it's a super tragic story. But we started having this moment of sharing stories like that with our honor guard team, because a lot of members did commit suicide at these funerals, and it really triggered them with people they lost in their own life. So we wanted to kind of create a space where we could talk about that so they could get through this time performing this duty. And I saw Jeremy Rutherford not even be able to get through it without breaking down. He couldn't even put it to words. And 2 years later, he's able to touch so many lives with that story because we have a new class every 6 months. So on that last class, he told it again, and he was able to articulate it. And I could see that he's healed from it because he's now able to understand it and articulate it in a way to help others. And I saw that directly heal him in that moment. And I was like, wow, like, holy crap, this is powerful. So I'd say connecting with people, having that clear mind, that clear heart, and losing a lot of those fears, because I now believe in myself a little bit more. So I don't need to rely on fear and ego as much.
That's awesome. And to be able to draw that inspiration again from somebody so close to you, to learn from other people's inspiration and tragedies, and be able to carry forward a message of inspiration to others, which is a lot of what you do now on the Hero Front podcast. I mean, what made you decide that was the platform that you wanted to do it? And how do you now balance producing a podcast with still maintaining a full career and family life?
So yeah, why I started, you remember the when I was in Kadena, those isolated nights with no mentor? Every episode I do, I'm trying to reach that airman or soldier, because they're still there. There's still that version of me out there looking for answers. I remember like YouTubing stuff, like the early days of YouTube, and there wasn't a lot out there. There really wasn't. And so if they don't have a mentor, if they are isolated, I want to at least provide something they can listen to know that they're not a failure, right? Other people have been through this. Because when I went through it, I thought I was the only one going through it, because it was so taboo to ever bring that up. I was under the impression that I was the only one that sucked and that had this problem. I thought truly I was the only one, which made me even more shameful about it. So I've basically made it my mission to own that part of my life and kind of do what Jeremy Rutherford did, find a way to articulate it, to let other people know they're not alone, so they don't have that extra layer of shame, feeling like they're the only one who's ever been in this situation. So that's who I'm trying to reach every episode. The second reason I started it was the honor guard. So Hero Front, the honor guard is at the front of every ceremony and parade, and they look like heroes, right? They have that visual, that powerful visual sight of purpose and heroism. And so it's actually named after that. Even my logo mirrors the Hap Arnold logo on all their caps that they wear. So that's what it's named after. And during that time, that's when I really felt comfortable, telling people what I cared about and what I appreciated about them. I realized I could always critique people and be negative and be a jerk and discipline someone. I always thought that was the tough skill to get down. It's not. It's actually way harder to be there for someone and compliment them and tell them what you appreciate about them. It's actually astronomically harder to do that. And I finally got to a place where I could highlight these airmen and really make them feel valued. And I created a Facebook page and I started highlighting them, their stories, what they got out of the Honor Guard program. I was showing their supervisors, their families sharing it. Basically what took no effort at all created this tremendous amount of love and pride, on the back end. And I never forgot that. I thought, man, that is so powerful. I need more of that in my life. And it's for those two reasons that I started the Hero Front podcast.
Josh, your podcast is amazing. I mean, you have such great conversations on there. And I love the fact that it came out of this place of trying to highlight the accomplishments of others, because that's a great leadership tool. When people do tune in to the Hero Front podcast, could you share kind of one of the stories that they might kind of encounter that stands out in your mind?
Definitely. So I talked to Bree McConnell, who is a medic and a Purple Heart recipient who still served after this attack that struck her in the Middle East. And what's amazing about that in podcasting is I've worked with her before, right? I was stationed with her at Whiteman. I had no idea that happened to her. She never said anything about it. She was even a 12 Outstanding Airman of the Year that year, which is like the highest award you can win. Again, super humble. I worked alongside this person that had no idea, right? After she leaves, someone just in passing tells me, yeah, she has a Purple Heart. And I'm like, what? Like, she never said anything about that. And they're like, yeah, she doesn't, she's pretty humble about it. And, that's what I love about podcasting, is that it gives you the intention to kind of unpack that stuff that you otherwise would have missed, right? So I never forgot about her. And when I started, I had her on, and it was like a super powerful discussion. Like, it's one of my most downloaded episodes because of how transparent she was and how incredible of a journey it was. And she's never really been in a setting to share it to that extent. But the podcast allowed her to really unpack that. So for anyone who's like a wounded warrior even, could listen to that and probably relate with her. I've also talked to super rare people, right? I say rare because they're just very hard to reach. So I talked to Lieutenant General Slife, who was the general over like special ops. He's going to be the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So probably going to pin on his 4th star and run the whole Air Force at the top. I was so honored to talk to him face to face. I was invited out to Hurlburt Field, and, just knowing where I came from 3 years ago, the adversity I faced with creating a platform as an active duty member, I was just so proud of myself that I hung in there. And now I'm able to talk to people like General Slife and spend an hour with him. And now we know who like our boss is, right? Like, it wasn't just me sitting in that chair asking questions that so many people would want to ask a man in that position. But now, tens of thousands of people can tune in, and now they kind of know this guy, right? It humanizes him. They know his story. That he's told times where he messed up. They know what he's passionate about. That would never happen without this podcast. They wouldn't know anything about him. When do you get to sit down with a general for an hour? It just doesn't happen. But now we all get to share that experience. So those are a few that come to mind that really showed me the power and healing and connection that podcasting brings.
Yeah, we've been at this for a year, and the stories, the kind of comfortability that we get into when just having an unscripted conversation with one another, getting to know each other and trying to share what we've learned with an audience that engages is so powerful. And you've been doing this now for 3 years, but it doesn't come without its own struggles and obstacles. What are some of those obstacles that you faced, and how have you overcome them, and hopefully like give guys like me inspiration to continue doing this for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
All right. So the obstacles, I'm paving the way for active duty airmen to podcast. Like, I took the hits. And I got to a point where my career was threatened. Coincidentally, I had this very toxic person in my life who had a lot of say in my career and did not want me doing the podcast or any of the social media stuff. And I had a really tough choice to make. Do I play this game and quit what I love and quit what I know is effective, but fit this mold to hopefully help my career? Or do I lean into the podcast and potentially take a hit? And, I just felt in my heart that these conversations need to happen, that they do bring a tremendous amount of connection and love to people's lives. And I thought that outweighed my own personal aspirations. And so I doubled down on it. And I did it. I can't promote now. I had 2 markdowns 2 years in a row, and I cannot promote anymore. I don't compare to my peers. Like, that's gone. I'm kind of in a blessed spot to start at like 17, 18 years in, right? Because I'm already so close to 20. It's not going to ruin my life, right? If I decide to retire, I'm already a senior NCO. It's still going to work out. So I weighed the pros and cons of it, but I thought, you know what? If I can get my foot in the door and pave the way now, there's going to be hundreds of people behind me And I know they are because I've helped them. They hit me up. I get asked almost daily. So much so that I have a copy and paste on how to start a podcast, and I've typed it all out just so I can tell them, because I get asked all the time because they feel comfortable doing it, right? And here's the thing, we all got a phone in our pocket, right? We all have the potential to share thoughts on social media. Why not teach people how to do that the right way, right? And to spread a positive message. We have enough negativity in the world. That's all the news is. You don't see positivity on the news. It's all chaos and war and hate and all this. Why not empower our airmen and soldiers, sailors, etc., to express themselves in a healthy and correct way, how to share their story? Why don't we teach them that? And so with that philosophy in mind, I empower the airmen. I took the hits, and now the floodgates have been opened, right? Now it's here and it's not going anywhere. I get invited on TDYs where I get to speak with Air Force leaders the whole time. The only stipulation is I have to be in civilian attire because I'm not owned by the Air Force, right? And I can't officially represent it, but I'm still invited to these conferences, and everyone is in line to come on. They all want to come on. They all really enjoy it. And so to see like where it started, I'm just so, proud of myself. And I don't say that often, for hanging in there, taking those hits, because the greater good on the back end is just tremendous.
Yeah, I love that you were so bold, especially to really put the service of the podcast and the positive messaging that you're trying to encourage other people to share, because there's a lot of negativity in the military as a whole, especially in the junior ranks, that only fester if not addressed properly as we progress in our careers. And so that negativity can continue to cycle over to the next generation. However, with podcasting, it can be anonymous. With being in service, like there's a right and a wrong way to say things. And if we're constantly just putting down our service, I can see where the detriment can come into play. However, there's the side where we can talk about our true experience and seek to give these tools to the next generation or even our peers to say, hey, I've been there too. I've been in your seat. The imposter syndrome within the military is a very real thing, going, I don't know if I really belong here, but people are telling me I'm doing such a great job. Like that's a very real feeling for a lot of military members to have. And so to even be able to share that, I don't know if I deserve that award, but I got it. And this is kind of the reality of what happened. And I love introducing this medium into the service. And you're about to retire in 2 years. With that's going to come new challenges for life. Retirement pay, fixed income, trying to get set up with the VA, and then looking either for another career or for a way for Hero Front to continue on and produce an income. What does your future goal look like for you upon retirement?
Man, that's the ultimate question. For the first time in my adult life, I don't know what's next, and I don't like that. You typically get orders to your next assignment. You can research the base. You can talk to that team. They know you're coming. You start looking for housing, and everything's kind of mapped out before you even get there. And to not know where I'm going after this, that's terrifying. I may try to capture this experience as I navigate it, because I know other people are feeling like this too that are in my shoes. Where I'll land, I just need to make sure that my family's taken care of. And I've also chosen something that I believe in, and I still feel that purpose. I hope that's not too much to ask for, but that's really what I'm looking for. As far as Hero Front goes, I've never monetized it, because had I monetized it, I wouldn't have access to a lot of the guests that I've had on. And so I have not monetized it. Once I'm a civilian, yes, I fully plan on monetizing it because I want to keep doing it, right? And I spend a tremendous amount of money in maintaining it, as you know, my website and all the apps I use for editing, and it all just really adds up. So it is a lot of money to keep doing. So I would love to get help with that. So as I transition out, I plan on monetizing it just for the simple fact that I want to keep doing this. And what that looks like, I just hope that positive message just grows and grows and grows. I just hope it it keeps going up. It keeps encouraging people. It keeps inspiring people, and it keeps changing their lives in the way my life was changed by sharing these stories. So I just want to see it. I just want to see it flourish and grow.
That's really awesome. I love the future outlook on that. If I can, just from the interviews that I've done, because I interview primarily veterans, not active duty, so people either in the midst or just after the transition, one of the biggest recommendations that everybody has kind of said down the line during this period is start 2 to 3 years out. Start that phase of kind of identifying what you want to do, because you're going to have to kind of start retraining yourself on some of these skills. I know for myself in 2011, I was told I needed to start making preparations to get out. They were talking about medically separating me, and that would have taken anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And I managed to not get medically separated, but continue out my contract for 2 years. But I had that 2 years to kind of prepare, and it helped me even prepare my wife for the financial difference that we were going to have for the future goal, because my goal primarily involved me going to school full time. And that was a significant pay cut. And so we were going to have to adjust whatever that looked like for us. So that's just my tidbit is start kind of looking at that right now. Start making those preparations, identifying and having those conversations with your spouse, because the transition period for the majority of veterans and anybody going through a transition, the greatest mental health challenges start to stack up. And we see this 5-year period after the service is one of the largest indicators of when mental health crises arise in the lives of veterans. And so in the face of these ongoing struggles and the heartbreaking reality of suicide among service members and veterans, what message of hope would you currently want to offer to those that are currently battling?
Yeah, so I've thought about that a lot as well, right? Because I've been in those shoes, right? I've been on that path, that dark path of wanting to quit and wanting to give up. And so thinking about that, what would be the best piece of advice I could give myself, really, is kind of how I was thinking about it. And it really starts with being honest with yourself. Okay, if you need help. Like, I was too proud to ask for help. During all that chaos I told you about, I never once asked for help. And that's on me. And I almost lost my life from not asking for help. So what I would tell a person in feeling that way is be honest with yourself. Own your struggles. Look in the mirror and really understand who you are and what is holding you back. And as soon as you own it, it's going to empower you to then talk about it and ask for help. But until you're honest with yourself, you can't even take a step forward. So that would be my biggest piece of advice of anyone going through it, is please just be honest with yourself, be real, own that story, own your life, and reach out. Because the second you ask for help, and you start to be honest with yourself through asking for help, you're going to already start healing. Just with that, you're already going to feel a little bit off your shoulders.
That's wonderfully said and so true. Josh, thank you so much for coming and sharing your journey, your words of inspiration. And for those in our audience looking to engage with you and find you, where can they locate your podcast and find you on social media?
Awesome. So herofrontpodcast.com, that fancy website I'm paying for, please check that out. And then on any social media, by simply searching Hero Front, you will easily find me. So those are the two best ways to link up with me.
Awesome, Josh. Thank you so much for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thanks, Danny.
And thank you for tuning into Josh's inspiring story while taking your walk today. Remember to track your progress on the Strava app and join our virtual walking community, 1 Mile, 1 Veteran, for daily motivation to stay active.